Africa, lifeline of the West, that's a joke. A lifeline is a rescue instrument from existing danger, and Africa is the continent in danger. The fact of the matter remains that Africa is grappling for survival, and the Western foreign policy has taken a sympathetic course because of Africa. Combined reports of the United Nations and the World Bank reveal that 75% of the population in Africa are poor. Life expectancy in Africa is about 49 years. 65% of the people living with HIV and AIDS in the world are in Africa. 43% of children in Africa do not have access to safe water. About 200 million people in sub-Saharan Africa alone are undernourished. About 16 million African children are orphaned by HIV and AIDS in Africa. Every 3 seconds, a child dies of hunger in Africa. About 200,000 child slaves are sold in Africa yearly. This is a pathetic situation. To save Africa from this horrible picture, the West has employed instruments of foreign aid, foreign direct investment, development fund, even credit facility and debt reliefs when Africa has deferred on payment. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa is the continent in crisis, and the West is Africa's lifeline. Thank you. I find my opponent's argument very interesting, but the truth of the matter is that I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Conspiracy theories are very interesting, and my opponent seems to be a supporter of conspiracy theories. Let me give you the facts about this matter. As far as contemporary issues are concerned, trade for Western countries with Africa is only about 10% of the entire international trade of Western countries. Whereas for most African countries, their economies are heavily dependent on the West. The truth of the matter is that several African countries depend on the West for foreign aid. Let's even leave international trade aside and forget about the profits that African countries rake in yearly from trade with Western countries. For foreign aid alone, several economies in Africa are heavily dependent on the bonanza, if you like, that they get from foreign countries. So, as far as this argument is concerned, is Africa the lifeline of the West? Absolutely not. How can Africa rescue the West from danger when Africa is in crisis? The West, on the contrary, is Africa's lifeline. Thank you.
Chinedu, I think that probably you are the only person so far who has bothered to define definitions and terms. And for that, well done. You settled down to a very balanced argument in which you spoke about child slavery. And though there is no word that I've heard of, such as horrorful, I love it. I love your ingenuity. I had a sense of the fullness of the horror of it.
I'm highly honored to address this respectable assembly. When in 1878, the American journalist Henry Stanley labeled Africa the dark continent in his travelogue, he was referring to the unexplored mystery of Africa. And though we have now mapped out every last mystery of this blessed continent, including that elusive source of the Nile, the label remains, sustained now by a dark perception of a woeful continent. But this is highly disturbing because it ignores the historical contributions of Africa to the light of modern civilization and prevents a relationship of mutual respect between Africa and the West. At the heart of Africa are some of nature's rarest and precious resources. These gifts of nature to Africa have oiled the wheels of Western industrialization, powered the technological advancement of the West, and served the consumption needs of the West. We cannot deny the challenges of Africa, which, though vary in degree, are by no means exclusive. But what we ask of the West is to accept the full picture of Africa, her glory and struggles, and thus discard this label of a dark continent. Let this message resound in the White House, in Downing Street, in Palais de la Lys, in Palazzo Chigi, in media circles, and other powerhouses of the West, that all corners of Africa must now be respectfully considered in foreign policy decisions. From Egypt, the gift of the Nile, to South Africa, the land of the rainbows, to Rwanda, the land of 1,000 hills, and Nigeria, the giant of Africa. Africa must now be seen and respected as a significant contributor to our Commonwealth. Ladies and gentlemen, we share a common destiny. Thank you.
Chinedu, I must really let you know that I was very impressed by that entertaining and informative presentation. But But more importantly, I think I like the way you ended your presentation. That call to action, well accentuated by the way you inflected your voice. You got people, and I'm sure the leaders from Downing Street to those places you mentioned. Thanks for educating me.